Bookworms, I love cooking almost as much as I love reading. Almost. And in my opinion, a well-written cookbook can be as much fun to read as literary fiction. LA Sun, Well Fed, and Back to Basics are three very different cookbooks that are all a great read for very different reasons. Hello and welcome to The Best Book Ever, the podcast where we get to know interesting people by asking them about their favorite book. I'm your host, Julie Strauss, and joining me today are the three hosts of my new favorite show, the Three Kitchens podcast. Sarah Somasundaram, Erin Walker, and Heather Dyer are longtime friends and passionate home cooks. On their weekly podcast, they take listeners along for a deep dive into one recipe. They talk and laugh through the challenges, successes, and failures along the way as they tackle recipes from around the world with locally found ingredients, right in their own home kitchens. Sarah, Erin, and Heather joined me today for a Cookbook-palooza. Each of them shared their personal favorite cookbooks and what they've learned from them. And listeners, I guarantee you're going to be starving by the end of this episode. Good morning, Three Kitchens ladies. Welcome to the Best Book Ever podcast.
Hi,
Good
Julie.
morning.
Hi, Julie.
This is so fun. Before we went on recording, I was asking if we can have a weekly coffee date because I already am in love with all three of these ladies. So I'm so excited.
And we feel the same way.
Yay.
Yes.
So let's start by telling my listeners about your podcast, which I had the tremendous honor of guesting on this week. And I'm so excited for you to listen to that. For my listeners who haven't heard of what you do, will you tell them about the Three Kitchens podcast?
So what we do is we cook and we review recipes. And we do this on a weekly basis. Our episodes come out on Tuesday and it comes out on every podcast forum you can think of. But it all started with three moms whose kids were in preschool. And we started hanging out a lot together and feeling a little lost in the game of parenting, I suppose, feeling a little beige and COVID happened, the pandemic happened, and we all got isolated. And what happened was we started on a very regular basis, Zooming, and that's so funny. That's become a verb now.
Yeah.
Zooming and cooking together or prepping our dinners together.
Yeah.
And then this very seamless conversation would happen with, what are you making? What's that? Like, what's that in your kitchen? Oh, that sounds amazing. And then the podcast was born.
Yeah.
The idea was born and it came into fruition. But
so you actually would have it set up in your kitchen and you would be talking about whatever was going on that day and then go, what are you making? I'm making tacos. Mm-hmm. What's that? What'd you just add? It was that kind of thing?
It was that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's how we kind of started out. We're like, it's the new version of the mom on the phone with the big long cord that stretched all the way through the kitchen. And you'd be on the phone and you'd be cooking and chatting with your friend and with the other parents. And yeah, it was the 2020 version of that.
Totally. And it was a lot of me saying, you guys, what do I do? What do I do with this? Or what do I do with that? And
a lot of Sarah saying, well, now I'm disappointed by my dinner because I don't want what you're making.
Yes, exactly. I never, all of a sudden that craving of what I was cooking went out the window because I wanted what they were cooking. So we would write each other's ideas down and then we would then get back to each other and go, okay, how did you make that again? And then we would make that for our family. And so that became very much what we do actually at Three Kitchens podcast. And we've been doing this for a little over a year, but how it has evolved more than just now three of us cooking each other's recipes or talking about recipes is that we have had the privilege of meeting communities that are outside of our kitchens, the farming communities, the the little businesses. I like to think that if we threw a little Three Kitchens party tomorrow, we would have some pretty awesome guests at the party, because we've met some really nice people through this experience, and it has made us discover that we always had a good revelry with food, but it has made us discover that there is a whole community around a meal that comes to our kitchen, that is just, it's so much more, and it's so much more fun. And it's so much more outside of the city. It's not even local sometimes it's international. And all these aspects and what people are doing in the food community are coming back right onto our plate.
So, like, does that mean you're getting to know farmers and producers and things like that through your podcast?
Absolutely. And we've had dinners with them. And, sometimes it's not just over the podcast. Sometimes we just want to take off and get away from the family. And, last summer we bought a ticket to quite an amazing dinner event out in the rural area. And we sat down with a whole bunch of producers and had a great night with them. I think a little too good. You know what I mean? But
no, I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about, Sarah?
There's never too good.
Well, there were wine. Let's just
that
say
was a lot of wine.
There were wine producers there, and we sat with some honey producers, honey farmers, and lamb producers. And,
that's right.
Yeah, we met some really interesting people, and it sort of sparked in us this idea that we can take this show beyond ourselves and get to know the community and maybe help support and raise up those small producers and businesses, and the corner store where you go for your, I was shopping for something for an African recipe, and I found this little Afro-Caribbean market, and you just kind of things that maybe you drive by and not stop in until you decide you're going to try something out of your regular repertoire, right? Oh, I picked an African recipe. Now what? So it's kind of, we're trying to expand it a little bit and get out into the community.
Now that you said African recipes, that was something I really want to ask you about. Is you guys are all over the place. So is that how you cook normally? Are you intentionally trying to learn or push yourselves, or what's your goal for how you're choosing the recipes that you try?
I think in some ways we have travel envy. We all wish we could be in different places, and we've all traveled different places. We've been lucky enough, and we've brought back a lot of that food to each other too. We were here, we had this great dish, we want to experience this, we want to share this with our friends. And I think we want to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. And the easy way to do that in many ways is to just go to a different culture, go to a different continent, right?
Yeah, I find the best conversations come out of something that's new. The first part of our episode, we record before we cook.
Yeah. So
we talk about, okay, I'm going to try this thing. And here's what I found. Sometimes some research goes into it, and there's a lot of questions. In particular, I always have lots of, what do you guys think I should do with this? And then the second half is after we've cooked it and eaten it. And lots of times, none of us has ever tried the thing before.
Right.
Much less cooked it. So it makes for a better conversation when there's questioning and exploring this new thing that we've never tried before.
Tell me what you were like as cooks before you started this, Zoom cooking together and then turning it into a podcast. And now, are you better cooks? Are you more experimental? Like, how has your cooking life changed?
I think because that's what I enjoy the most of it, is the thing that I'd always wanted to do, but it was too intimidating, or it looks too technically difficult, or, some things you can't even pronounce, much less know what to do with, some French pastry, something or other that's it can be really intimidating. But this is a platform where I think each of us feel like we can take this on. It's okay to fail. It's okay to laugh at ourselves.
We have the phone a friend option.
Out, it's okay.
The phone a friend option. That's
it. There's a lot of behind the scenes texting with oh my God, what do I do now? I'm the type A cook, I guess.
Okay.
I've got the meal plan. I've got the grocery list that corresponds with it. I've got my recipes typed out in a binder that are my go-tos that I refer to all the time. And this has made me learn to do more flying by the seat of my pants. I've taken a note from Heather especially, but there's some nights where I will take out the meat that I know I'm going to cook with, and I will refuse to think about what I'm cooking until the time comes. And then I think, okay, what am I going to do? And it makes me, I explore with more flavors. There's been so many fun recipes that we've learned from each other that you kind of just, what do I feel like right now? And it makes you, more in the moment cooking rather than planning it out. So it's definitely changed my ability to kind of freestyle it way more. And it's fun now. It doesn't scare me like it used to. Whereas beforehand, like if I didn't know what I was cooking and had it come 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, I would be, huddled up in a corner.
I've brought you over to the chaotic dark side.
The dark side.
Which is my life.
You've taught me to go with the flow.
My whole sort of past with cooking was learning it through the internet, or learning it actually in the beginning through Food Network. Remember that? Remember TV? Because I never got taught cooking from my family. That wasn't something that got passed down. And at one point, my mom went back to Singapore for a job. So it was my dad and me here, and, not a lot of cooking was taking place. So when that started, when I stuck to a recipe, I kind of stuck to a recipe like, this is Chinese food, this is Indian food, this is Italian food. And what has happened is that is all sort of melded into one now for me with cooking and this podcast, because you can take a technique from something that Erin did for some recipe and you can apply it to something that you make on a daily basis and make it and up it, or the word that we like to claim, zhuzh it up.
Nice.
Right. Yeah. And that has changed.
People are very intimidated by doing that with recipes, though, don't you think? And it's that's what makes people dislike cooking, is because we get very hampered by the recipe says this.
Box, right? You get stuck in the box, and the funny thing is, it is very intimidating to come out of that box. But when you start seeing other people do something, and when you just have to try it and not worry about failure, because in the end, we are home cooks and our customers are our husbands and kids. And if they don't like it, they're not eating. The best kind of customers ever. Right? So I think when it comes to home cooking, don't worry about it.
Now, when I talked to you last week, I heard a little snippet of conversation that y'all know I'm going to come after you for and hear about this. But evidently, after one of your recipes, one of you texted someone else the text, WTF did I just eat? I really want the story behind this text. And I told you, when y'all said it in our last conversation, I said, oh, we're coming back to that. So
so
I want to hear.
That was me. And Erin had made, I'm going to keep this brief.
It was what I made.
Erin made a persimmon jam. She was on a mission to find out, what does a persimmon taste like? It's not something that grows here. It's not something we're super familiar with, but we see it in the grocery store when it comes out, when it's persimmon season, I guess, somewhere in the States or wherever. And we're like, oh, what is this persimmon? And so Erin was sort of on a mission to find out what it tasted like, and none of us knew. And so we really wanted to know. And her second attempt at trying to get to the persimmon flavor was a jam. And she knew, because she had tried it before she delivered it to us. So she knew, she was just waiting, I think, for the reaction, right? And so it comes to me and I get this jar and I took just a little scoop of it and I put it in my mouth. And I'm not kidding, it felt like fur first, like grew, like fur just grew in my mouth. Like it was the weirdest, never mind the flavor. It was like this weird texture. And I couldn't stop laughing. It was just like this, I was like, blah, what the? So I texted her, WTF did I just eat? Like, what happened? This is like no jam I've ever eaten. It was so weird.
So we discovered that persimmons, the type that I cooked with, have to be extremely ripe.
Squishy.
Like, yeah, water bag.
Yeah.
Oh, she knows. Okay.
Julie knows about this. So
Julie, we should have talked to you.
I did not let it ripen long enough. And apparently it is astringent.
Astringent. Yeah, that's the word I always associate with them.
Yeah. So now we know exactly what that means because we have had the mouthfeel. And astringent is like sucking on a velvet cloth.
It was so weird. It was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. That's okay. You got to have the fail now and then because it keeps you humble.
That's
and
right.
Also makes for fun conversation. So.
Oh yeah.
Tell me your favorites and least favorites of the things that you have cooked for the podcast.
We did an episode called Date Night where I did tacos with a peri-peri chicken and actually a recipe of salsa verde out of Roy Choi's cookbook and a caipirinha as a cocktail. And it was a beautiful night. It was really hot outside and it was the perfect drink and the perfect food. And I feel like that's like a huge happy memory for me. And the next day I invited friends over for the same thing. I think Heather came over, Erin couldn't. But
you did.
And I served the whole thing again.
Oh, nice. And what was your least favorite, Sarah?
You can just put my jam out there. We all hated the jam.
Do we agree that the jam was just the loser of the
jam?
Yeah, the jam.
The jam was not edible.
Yeah. Okay.
But another thing I would say I dislike is every time these two come up with a beet recipe, my heart sinks just a little bit because I'm not a fan.
Okay, Heather, what about you? What's been your favorite and least favorite of the podcast?
I made babka for the first time.
Oh, yum.
Yeah.
And we remembered back to the Seinfeld episode where Jerry and Elaine were trying to decide which was the lesser babka, the chocolate or the cinnamon. So I made both. And I don't think we came to a consensus. Honestly, we love them both. There's no lesser babka in this world. All the babkas are the good babkas. Yeah. I was really, I love that. And I've made it again since, which is like the mark of a good recipe is when you want to actually make it again.
Yeah.
With a different flavor. Tell her what you made it with this time.
Oh, just for Easter, I made it. It was a cardamom bourbon chocolate filling.
Doesn't that sound amazing?
And she didn't share any with us.
How'd you get bourbon into it?
You just mix it in with the
dough
filling. No, with the filling. It's like you know what you would do for a cinnamon bun, like butter. It's butter, cocoa, bourbon. Like sugar. That's the mix that goes in the middle. It was heavy on the bourbon, I have to say. There were a few people in my family who were like, "Whoa, that was a little." I liked it. It was a little heavy. I would maybe tone that down a bit, but it was tasty for sure.
Yum. Okay, and Erin, what about you? Do you have a favorite from the podcast?
I have so many favorites. For sure, my favorite though was cooking with my grandmother. So I got to make a strudel with her, and she just I spent the weekend with my mother and my grandmother, and she told us how to make this, and my mom did all the work, and I just sat back with my grandma and we chatted, and she explained about it. And then I brought the recipe home and said, okay, now I'm going to make this after hearing what she said and writing down the information. And that was a really fun episode. And it was just really special because it was with my grandma, right? So that was fantastic. And then I also really, really, really loved early Heather made something called ban sao. And it's a Vietnamese crepe or pancake that has shrimp fried into it. And it had this great dip with it, nok cham, which I think is with a lot of Vietnamese food dip. But Heather made it for us. We got to sit in her kitchen while she cooked it up, and we all ate together. So that was a great experience. Anyway, after we made it, it's all I thought about for like weeks. And then I went and made it, and my family was like, I don't know, it's different. I ate, 6 to 12 of these dang things that night. And then I had it the next day for breakfast and lunch. And because the recipe makes a lot, you have a lot of batter that you fry. So I just ate it constantly, I think, for 2 days because I just could not get over how much I loved the flavor and the texture and the crisp and it was like a whole new flavor for my mouth I had never had before.
Okay, Julie, you're going to have to just cut us off because we could just talk about all the food.
Don't ask what we like because it is a rabbit hole.
I can't help but notice that all of your most favorite ones are not only good food, but you're also going, and I was with my grandma and I sat with her, and we were sitting outside eating ice cream. That's always what it is the food is so much better when it's got that connection to someone. Like you said, Sarah, it's got a feeling, and then for the rest of your life, that recipe is just magic to you. I love that.
That's the best part of it.
Yeah.
And I think we hope that everybody else goes and, try these things with a friend or with your family and make it fun.
Make your memories.
Make your memories with those recipes. It's not about just producing the food and eating the food and filling your stomach. It's everything that goes into the before and the after and the enjoyment of it, right?
This episode is sponsored by Lover's Moon by Mark Leslie and Julie Strauss. Hello, Julie Strauss, host of Best Book Ever and contemporary romance author.
Hello, Mark Leslie, frequent guest of the show and horror author.
Julie, what do you know about werewolves?
Absolutely nothing, Mark. I'm scared of everything. What do you know about romance novels?
Well, my mom read a ton of romance when I was a kid, and Fabio was always on the cover, so Fabio must be in every romance novel, right?
That's exactly right, yes. Mark, do you know what we should do?
I do, yeah.
Let's say it at the same time, okay?
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Never speak again.
Write a book together.
Yes, what you said. We should write a book together.
I was thinking we could each write about our favorite things.
Yeah, bloody fangs.
And making out.
Occult shops.
Having sex in a bubble bath.
Ancient feuds.
A marriage proposal in Central Park.
A book made of human skin.
And friendly honeybees.
We've really got something here.
I don't see how it could fail.
Lover's Moon by Mark Leslie and Julie Strauss is now available everywhere you buy books.
Wait, Mark, what was that thing you said earlier?
Don't worry about it.
Well, so let's move on to the books that we chose. Erin, this one's yours, right?
Yes, that's me. Okay, it's called Back to Basics, and it's by Chef Michael Smith. Julie, you said he was new to you?
Yeah, and interestingly, normally what I do for this podcast is I go through my local library. I always think has everything, and I couldn't find it at the city library. I couldn't find it in our county system. So I actually had to order this online because I don't think he's well known in America. I don't know.
I assume he's not. He's a Canadian chef. And I think when we were talking about how much we loved Food Network, that's where I first met him.
She says that with hearts in her eyes.
That's where I first met him. I love the way he cooks, and I love, he's a really, down to earth, seems like a normal human being kind of guy. And I love what he says at the very beginning of the book, because he says, this book is for anyone who likes to play in the kitchen, for all who realize that recipes are more than a destination, they're a journey. And I I'm going to be such a sap, but I just love that idea. I love that it's about just having fun and expressing yourself and enjoying it, and that it's all around, food.
What have you made from this that you're particularly fond of?
So many things.
What haven't you? Is that
haven't I? One of my favorites on page 25 is a tomato basil quinoa salad. And I have made this for potlucks and everywhere and anywhere. I like bringing this to potlucks because it is gluten-free, and we know a lot of people who have celiac allergies. It's vegetarian. It can check off all the things for food sensitivities, and it's just delicious.
It looks so good.
It is so crispy with the onions and the freshness in there. I love the fresh basil in there when I have basil growing. My family really loves, on page 73, the beef pot pie with the cheddar biscuit crust.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
So I make this because my kids get really sensitive over the fact that when you put the cheddar biscuits on top to bake them at the end, the bottom is a little bit soggy. They would die eating a soggy piece of bread. It is lethal, in case you're wondering.
I didn't know. Thank God you told me.
Soggy bread can kill you. So I usually just mix up the cheddar biscuits and just roll it out, chop it into pieces, and throw it in the oven in the last 30 minutes while it finishes. And it's like these delicious fresh biscuits that you're dipping into this is comfort food all the way. And then my favorite recipe is the heritage bread that he has listed in here.
Tell me what is so special about it. She sighs.
Okay, however old this book is, I have been making this bread for my family every day since I got this and started making it. It is so easy to make. It's an overnight bread that you mix it all up in the bowl the night before. It sits on your counter overnight. In the morning, you punch it down, you put it in your pan, you bake it, and you have a fresh loaf of bread. My kids love this bread. I've modified and changed it for myself. I make it with white flour and whole wheat flour. I add in flax seeds, hemp seeds, millet, and like right now I have some extra cornmeal. And so I just put a tablespoon of that in, and it is so, so delicious. It is a really hearty, moist bread. I never feel bad when my kids are like, can I have Nutella toast or peanut butter toast or whatever? Because I'm like, sure, put some stuff on there. You're eating like a really good, filling, yummy bread.
Okay, what I have to ask you is,
okay,
holy hell, what is a brown butter tart? Can you guys see that? Oh,
yes.
I want to know too. Is that different than a butter tart?
Okay, what's a butter tart?
See, this is where Canada comes in.
Okay.
I'm going to have to default. Heather, you make butter tarts, correct?
Oh, it's a Christmas staple. Wow, I don't think mine look that good. Let's just say. But a butter tart is basically a sugar tart. It's essentially brown sugar and butter. There are serious debates about whether or not you put in raisins. Some people love them. Some people will not. Like Sarah is like, no raisins. I personally love raisins in my butter tarts, but I would not turn it down if you make it without. I don't know.
Raisins,
what does Michael
and
Schiff
pecans.
say? Nuts too.
Yeah.
Heather, so will you tell us about the book that you chose?
Sure. Now, I should probably begin by saying I don't use cookbooks a lot. But this is one that I picked up many years ago, and it looks like I've been using it, right? When my husband and I were first married, we ate a paleo diet for a few years. This is called Well-Fed, Paleo Recipes for People Who Love to Eat by Melissa Julwan. And if you don't know, paleo is just no grain, sugar, legumes, or dairy, which sounds like the saddest thing in the world.
So no butter tarts is what you're telling me.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Forget that shit. No, Now that I know what butter tarts are.
Yeah. But I will just quantify this as saying we were not hardcore paleo people. We were very much like, it's kind of like the way us ladies do CrossFit, which is CrossFit-ish, CrossFit light. We were kind of paleo when it suited us, like probably 80% of the time. I mean, there's also no alcohol in a paleo diet, so
what is that?
Is this
so
bullshit?
Obviously, yeah, exactly. And I don't know that it's necessarily like when you hear paleo, you think like, oh, it's what cavemen ate or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I always said, well, if they'd had wheat, they would have made bread too. They just didn't have it. They would have drank the beer if they could have made it. But
they were fermenting something and drinking it. Let's be.
Well,
or eating the mushrooms or licking the frogs. You know that they were
something. Okay. Well, but I did really like this book because at the time, when we kind of like what we did was basic meat and vegetables. And it gets tiring after a while. It's like the same old, same old. So this book appealed to me because it has a lot of other flavors. There's influences from all over the world. There's really great spice in some of that still a basic diet, but it's just leveled up. Like it's more interesting. So if you follow a paleo diet and you're bored, here's your book.
I have to say, what I absolutely loved about this book is the sections after almost every recipe that says, you know how you could do that.
Yeah.
And she takes, like, for example, this one that I have flagged, a chicken paillard, which is basically just a pounded and shallow fried chicken breast. And then the next 2 pages are how to make it Greek, how to make it pesto, cucumber pineapple salsa, mushroom pancetta jam. So it's like all these different ways. I love that because then you've got the technique and then you do what you want with it. Phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly. You make it your own or you make it different every time you make it. Like you've got 4 different ways to make it. So you're not making it the same every time.
Yeah.
And you're not getting as bored. That's the whole thing. You get tired of this kind of diet, right? And you have to get creative because there's so many limits to it.
Yeah. The other thing I flagged was the tuna salad section. Speaking of terrible lunches, she's got this whole section of different ways to make tuna salad: curry, Asian cashew, Vietnamese, Italian. I mean, come on, that's so great. Tuna's so boring, and these all look so good.
I think you and I do we have slightly different versions? There were 2 of them. Yeah, you've got the second one. Weeknights. This is the first one. That's okay. It's the same format, but you might have slightly different recipes.
Okay.
There are a couple things in here that I still go back to, even though we don't eat this. Once we had kids, it was really hard not to have snacky things, not to have muffins and granola bars and like the things that little kids constantly have in their hand. And once it's in our house, forget it. We're eating it, right? Yeah. So we kind of abandoned. We stuck with it for a while and then was like, it's too hard. It's too much work. I'm not making different food for everybody. So, but there are still things in here that I refer back to. One is a spice mix called Ras El Hanout, which is a North African spice blend. It's like cumin, ginger, pepper, cinnamon, coriander, cayenne, allspice, cloves, nutmeg. And you can mix this up in whatever kind of ratios that you like. And it's good on everything. And that's the kind of thing you need if you're kind of doing a basic diet, right? Another one that I have marked that we still make, my husband made this last night. He's a firefighter and he had to make dinner at work because he lost the hockey pool. So I did this in advance for him, where you brine chicken breast and then put a spice rub on it before you grill it. And it's a really good, really good technique. It's actually called the best chicken you will ever eat. And it just takes that chicken breast, which tends to be kind of plain and dry sometimes. And it's a technique that puts more moisture into it. And the spice rub, it's a different spice rub. It's also really great.
Yeah.
And in the, you know how you could do that section, she says put it on chicken thighs or pork chops and bake it in the oven. If you don't have a barbecue, you can bake it. And then she's got the little section that says it tastes great with, and there's different recipes from within the book that go well with the chicken, like Middle Eastern cucumbers, baba ganoush, orange salad, so it makes it simple if you don't know what to have with it. Yeah.
This is totally a cookbook I would pick up, and I would recommend picking up even if you were not paleo, because they look so good. And then you just serve it with your bread or your rice or whatever else that you're eating that paleo people don't necessarily eat. But the salads look so good in this book.
And there's dips and sauces. Oh, I got to make this for Sarah. I've never made this one, but there's a Sri Lankan curry sauce. And I'm like, I'm going to make that for Sarah and see how authentic it actually is.
I just love that she uses so many spices in this. I think you have loaned me that book before, and it was very interesting. From all over the world.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
So Sarah, tell us about your book.
So the book I picked, this is one of the ones that I go to, especially in the summer. And it's Roy Choi's LA Sun. So I met Roy Choi, much like Erin met Michael Smith on Food Network. I met Roy Choi on you have to watch the show. It's called The Chef Show on Netflix. And he's on it with Jon Favreau. Am I saying his last name correctly? And it was quite interesting because I know who Jon Favreau is. I didn't know who Roy Choi was at that point. And I'm watching these two sort of cook together. And the reason they know each other is because Roy Choi taught Jon Favreau how to cook for a movie that he was doing. He was playing a chef. And I'm watching these two cook together, and I go, that's really cool that Jon Favreau is really intense and right there. But that is not the kind of style of cooking or cook I am. And I was watching him cook, and I'm like, he's so chill. And he's so he's not in the limelight. He's just sort of in the background doing things. And I'm like, that is me. That's the kind of I don't like to be stressed in my kitchen. So I picked up his cookbook just because I was hoping, and from what I had gathered from the show, that he would have some Korean recipes in this. And he did. And it's my favorite cuisine. But then I read his bio, and that's when I love this book for the story about him more than the recipes. The recipes are amazing, but the story is very fascinating. And I don't know if you had a chance to read it, Julie.
I did. And it's much more of much more of an autobiography, I think, than the other two.
It is. And I'm just very amazed. And after I read the book, I started following him more. I watched Broken Bread, and he just came up with the second season, I think, end of last year. It just amazes me. And if you guys have a chance to pick up the book and read it, the past that he came from, it doesn't make any sense that he turned out to be the person he is, because he just doesn't get out of his past. He leaves the chips on his shoulders like they're none. And he just starts to help the same community that he came from and he hurt from. And it's amazing. I'm quite taken by the story.
This guy also can write.
Yes.
And in particular, who would think that his tale of the first time he did crack would be so gripping? But I read this sentence 10 times and then I flagged it because I had to tell you guys about it. He taught me how to take the first hit, back straight, flame to rock, quick puff, chest expanded. It tasted like all the things in the closet of my life if the skeletons in there had been made of saltwater taffy. I read that sentence and went, do I want to try crack?
Oh no, Julie. No.
He is so smart. And when I first got this book, I remember when I opened it and I started reading it on the couch, and then I quickly made lunch and I went outside and I sat on my patio and I finished the book. it was, you just couldn't look away.
Yeah.
And I gave it to my husband, and he did the same thing the next day. Because my husband and he are very similar in age. And so they have a lot of favorite icons and language that are very similar. And it's a story you have to read. It is a story you would really be taken by the story.
Yeah, it's a great one. So tell me your favorite, the recipes just, I mean, God, you just want to cook every single thing in here, but tell me your favorites.
Mm-hmm. So just with one thing about the recipes is this is not in my opinion, a Korean cookbook. This is what I would call an American cookbook. He is a trained chef, right? So you've got recipes from all around, all over, all the influences that America can boast of, right? But my go-to, and I'm telling you, when I say this is simple, it is simple. These two ladies have made it, so they can actually vouch for me, is salsa verde, which...
Oh, I did. I flagged that one.
Yeah. Really an amazing thing. If you don't have one or two of these ingredients in your fridge, or you can't find it, don't worry about it. It's still amazing. It's a really good recipe.
So you just use it as a generic condiment, or do you use it in a specific recipe?
With chips, with tacos.
Put it on put it on your carnitas when you make those, Julie.
Yeah. Oh, that would be so good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're right, Erin. Drink it with a spoon. Yeah. And the other one that I had, I don't really put tabs on my cookbooks. I just kind of open it and then it goes to that page because that's what I've been using a lot. Or I know it's a popular one because I've got sauces splashed on the pages. We went camping, our very first camping trip, and I made his galbi plate. And I love eating Korean barbecue. Those for me are like 5-hour nights outside in the summer. And I decided to marinate this, and I brought it to the camping.
Yeah.
For a camping dinner, and we had his Korean barbecue outside. Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful day again, and we ate and we ate and we ate, and it was so good.
Camping is not what I thought it was at all.
You got to camp with us.
Oh my God, clearly.
There's no hot dogs.
That's the most important part. Yes, we'll sleep in, on, wherever, whatever. We have to have good food.
So when I was lucky enough to be on your podcast last week, you ended with a speed round. And I want to do one of the questions for you three. What would your final meal be? And we were talking about this book that I have called My Last Supper, 50 Great Chefs and Their Final Meals, Portraits, Interviews, and Recipes. And it is a supremely fun book. And there's kind of a badass picture of each of the chefs. And sometimes they're just posing, but sometimes they're being wacky or whatever. There's a picture of Anthony Bourdain naked in here, by the way. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Now I got to find it.
Yeah. Yes, now I have to see.
Yeah.
You just shocked me with that.
Sorry. Look at that.
What is he holding?
It's like
what is that?
Bone of some animal.
A bone. Oh my God.
Of course it is.
It doesn't say what it is, but it looks like like a cow thigh bone or something.
Yeah. He was such a character.
Oh man.
He is. Yeah, he was.
But so then they each go through and they say like the questions are the same for everybody. What would be your last meal on earth? What would be the setting? What would you drink? Would there be music? Who would be your companions? And some of the chefs say, I literally want tacos and margaritas with my wife on a beach. And some of them, like Mario Batali's is like 10 pages long. I want this vintage wine with this exact truffle and this pasta. So it's a really fun read. So I would love to hear from each of you. Tell me about your final meal.
Okay. I think I would have my husband's burgers. My husband makes the best burger patty that I think anyone could ever make. If there was a burger competition, I'm pretty sure, like we both agreed that he should enter it because He makes the best burgers.
Is there a magic ingredient? Does he do anything besides beef, or he just really
love?
Lots of love. It's beef, onions, eggs. There's no sauce. There's no salt, no pepper, nothing special in there. It's just, I don't know what he makes and how he cooks it. It is the juiciest, tastiest. It like melts off the bun. So good burger. And sometimes we fry. I think I'd have the fried pineapple on there, the grilled pineapple on there, because I really love that grilled pineapple on the burger. And I would want to be eating it in Argentina is my
nice,
because the meat and the cheese and the everything there is so delicious.
And what would you be drinking with your Argentine burger meal?
I'm not much of a drinker, but I would probably...
It's your last night.
I would...
Yeah, like what are you worried about?
Guess,
you won't feel the effects of it later.
That's okay. Yeah. That's okay. I'd probably just have a good beer with it, because I love with the burger. A beer and a burger. So,
Okay, Sarah, what about you?
So how I answered last time, I then realized that we could travel for this. So I'm changing my answer. I think, you know what, just talking about this book, and I used to live in Korea for many years. I would just go back there. I would eat all the food there because it was so chill. I would drink myself silly and I would be around friends.
Nice.
And
Sarah is really silly when she drinks.
Lots of accents come out.
Excellent. Okay, Heather, what about you?
Okay, I have to say sushi because it's one of my absolute favorite things, and it's not something I make at home or even really have any interest in. I took a sushi rolling class one time. It was really fun, but I'm not going to make it at home. But I love all the sushi. I love all the fancy rolls and all the way some sushi chefs get really creative with it. And they put in all the things and all the toppings and the sauces and the spices. I love all the stuff. I once was in Mexico where they put cheese in sushi, which was really weird. We were like, is this like a Mexican thing? I have no idea. But even that I loved. I didn't even really care.
Yeah, it was good.
Because it was good. And I wouldn't request it or anything, but I didn't think I would like it, but it was good.
Listen, I want to have all three of you back on to talk about non-cookbook books.
Yes, please.
Until then, I always end this by asking my guests what they're reading right now. So would you mind going through and telling me like what is on your bookshelves right now? Because I would love to hear.
Let me go first because I can't remember the name of the book, but it's Mary Westmacott. I had recently, I think it was 2 years ago during isolation, bought the whole series of Mary Westmacott books, who is Agatha Christie.
Oh,
you guys know, but it's not a mystery, but it was a different kind of book. It was more about human nature. But if I can recommend one of them, it's Absent in Spring. It's such a beautiful book.
I've never even heard of these. How did you discover them?
They're really hard to get now because I don't think that they were as popular as her Agatha Christie books, her murder mysteries. But I found them at some sort of secondhand online book thing, and they had the whole series. And I'm like, hey, just bring it over because I've read every single one of her books.
Okay, Heather, what about you?
Oh, I love a good historical fiction. And I just finished one called The Orphan Collector by Ellen Marie Wiseman. Have you read this one?
No, what's this about?
It's set in Philadelphia, just I think it's 1918, at the end of World War I, and the Spanish flu pandemic hits. So there are a lot of really eerie similarities when you look at the pandemic and the COVID pandemic. So Spanish flu, COVID, in many ways, people do not evolve. People are...
Oh, boy.
We're just doomed to repeat our history. If it's war, if it's a virus, if it's prejudice, and we want to got to blame somebody. just like we've seen Asian hate in relation to COVID. At that time, it was German hate. And, oh, it's a Spanish flu. We must hate all immigrants because the flu came from somewhere else and people were dropping like flies. It's just, aside from all of that, there's some really lovable characters and some really hateable characters, which I love because, I like having a villain.
Yeah.
Even when it's a story that's not really about a fight or whatever. It's just, it's an interesting slice of that little bit of history.
Oh, that sounds good. Okay. All right, Erin, hit me.
Okay. One of the books that I just most recently finished that I thought was really interesting was called The Lost Boys by Gina Perry. There was some experiments that were conducted, social experiments that were conducted on groups of young children around the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, Cold War kind of times, in terms of how to create division within a group and then how to create the group dynamic to come back together. And I can't remember the name of the scientist who conducted these experiments, but he quite looked up to William Golding, who wrote Lord of the Flies and did some experiments on boys. And so many of the boys who participated in these experiments that he conducted at summer camps didn't even know that they were part of his experiments. So his papers after he died and all of his notes became available. And this author came across them and get like every single note that the people he had running these summer camps and everything. And she kind of constructs what happens at them and the reports that were written and the papers that he then published afterwards. And she looks into all this, and it's really interesting, these fairly unethical experiments that happened with these boys, right? Because first they brought them together as a group and made them bond. And then they started pitting them against each other and doing things. And it was really interesting how a lot of the stuff failed because the boys wanted to see their friends and wanted to stick up for their friends. But then in the second half of the book, she goes into why she thinks that he conducted these experiments based on the life that he had growing up. So he grew up in Turkey in and around the fall of the Ottoman Empire and all this kind of stuff happening and all these crazy things that he would have experienced in his life and how that was reflected in the way that he conducted himself and the experiments and the things that drew him in. It was really interesting psychological breakdown on that, and then some Turkish history that I didn't really know. And
okay, that was a really interesting blend of answers to that question. I cannot wait to have all of you back on to talk about your book choices. All right, ladies, will you please share with my listeners where they can find your wonderful podcast?
We are on all the podcatchers, as they call them. That's kind of a new word to me. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, we are Three Kitchens Podcasts. And we are on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube.
And we release every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday, we have a new recipe. We have interesting guests like Julie who are sharing recipes with us. We have one coming up. Actually, I think it will have gone out already by this time with where we're talking to the fire department about how they cook at the fire hall. And we've talked to a farmer about producing food for people. Like we're just, we're having some fun with it, and we hope people will tune in and check it out.
Yes. It is a blast. I love your podcast. I love you three. I'm so delighted that I found you, and I want to thank you for joining me. This has really been so fun, and I'm starving.
We all are. Thank you so much, Julie. This was so much fun. So much fun.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you so much, Julie. And we love this podcast too. It is.
Thank you.
It's so fun to be on it with you.
Can't wait to come back.
If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you subscribe to the Three Kitchens podcast for a weekly dose of Sarah, Erin, and Heather. I got to join them on episode 36, and I had a blast sharing my family's favorite recipe with them and cooking one of Sarah's supposedly simple recipes. Spoiler alert, it was not simple, but it was delicious, and we had a lot of fun talking about it. So now I would love to hear about your favorite cookbook. And what about that last meal question? Have you ever thought about that? Tell me all about it over on Instagram at Best Book Ever Podcast. Remember, you can find links to all the books we discussed in the show notes or at my website, bestbookeverpodcast.com. And if you have a book you want to tell me about, click on the Be a Guest button on my website or Instagram bio so we can chat. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you at the library. Wait, the ice cream goes in the clamato juice?
Oh, no.
Just
what
that was
the hell
on the
is
side.
going on in Canada? Okay.
No, you put vodka in the clamato juice. That's actually
Yes.
Gotcha. So you were having
We had cocktails and ice cream.
Got it.
separate. Not like at the same time.
Now it sounds good.
Well, kind of at the same time.
I was trying to be very open-minded.